Greetings. Reflecting on your fascinating conversation about harm reduction, I want to highlight some particular themes and ideas. As Elizabeth points out, there's a wide complexity and variety of harm reduction strategies. It's a highly charged topic. And I was impressed by your respectful handling of divergent perspectives. You did this really beautifully. I wish every group of colleagues could handle diverging perspectives so well. You also took advantage of the opportunity to examine your own preconceived ideas regarding harm reduction and recovery. Once again, you have also proved the educational value of sharing lived experience, and I appreciate those stories and your generosity in sharing them. As Megan points out, a harm reduction perspective recognizes that relapse is part of recovery, and so it's, in her view, less likely that a person will have unrealistic expectations or feel ashamed and discouraged and give up. It's a very important point. Several of you discussed the importance of meeting clients where they are. As Christy put it, every person has a different path to recovery. While there are some who have benefited from immediate, complete abstinence, it's a deal breaker for those who are using a drug that has a physical or psychological withdrawal. I also would add that it can be a deal breaker for people who have untreated co-occurring disorders that make their reality really untenable to them without self-medicating. As Cecilia points out, a person will not get very far in recovery if we cannot meet them where they are. It's tragic to think of people stuck in their journey because services are being refused during a time when they need help the most. You had a fascinating exchange in response to the prompt about pregnant women. As Liliana points out, the importance of social workers understanding that pregnant women are like everyone else with regard to the difficulty quitting and the need for advocacy for people rather than blame. Several of you discussed that the fear of CPS in particular can be a deterrent to getting prenatal care, much less care for their addiction. As Elizabeth points out, I think when a pregnant woman relapses, the stigma and guilt she must feel may keep her from coming back into treatment. And Heather suggests that the challenges, there are some challenges particular to pregnant women, that guilt and shame are probably bigger factors for why they don't receive prenatal care. And that is, as you can see, directly a function of societal stigma. And Elizabeth underscores the need for education that's not shaming, so that pregnant women can learn about the consequences of their drug use for children, but they can learn about it in a way that doesn't shame them. As Elizabeth points out, knowing something is hurting you and the people you love does not help you to quit. It only increases your humiliation, usually leading to using again. because using is their coping mechanism. And this is a critical point. I'm going to read that another time. Knowing something is hurting you and the people you love does not help one to quit. It only increases their humiliation, usually leading them to using, because that is their coping mechanism. It is, it's so important to understand that if you don't give people alternative coping strategies, they're very likely to use the ones that they have been using. You had a very interesting conversation with regard to medical detox. As Nikki points out, clients using methadone versus Suboxone may not be accepted into a treatment program, and they may not return. Paya explains the importance of explaining to clients and families that medication-assisted therapy keeps a person alive and stabilizes them. On the other hand, Amanda points out that medical detox can actually perpetuate addiction for some people. Elizabeth notes that Suboxone seems to really be giving people back their lives, whereas methadone in some cases she views as just a safe way to continue to abuse drugs. Several of you discussed another theme, which was the relationship between addiction and mental illness, and also the importance of an integrated multimodal approach, and the importance of tailoring the treatment to a client's particular needs. And Scott underscores the importance of refraining from projecting onto clients a therapeutic approach that has worked for you. And you can see that's a particular hazard with people who have experienced addiction themselves and may feel very strongly that the method they used to enter into recovery was effective, and maybe for them the only one of several strategies that they found to be effective. So you can see how tempting it would be to make the unfounded assumption that what works for you will work for your clients. And as Scott points out, I assure clients that the goals that they want to accomplish while in treatment are their goals, and that they are the ones driving the car. Michael contributes the reframe that seeking intoxication is a common human drive rather than a failing of individual people, and tells a fascinating story about Bill Wilson regarding the role of hallucinogens in treating alcoholism. Justin points out contrasting perspectives with regard to prescription versus non-prescription drugs, and how this framing can facilitate addiction and interfere with recovery. You had a very rich discussion also with regard to housing first and the differential applications of that theory, some of which seem to be far afield from the original theoretical basis. In any case, housing, you agree, is an important component of harm reduction. Scott underscores the influence of racism on drug legislation and policy, and brings our attention to the correlation that has been found between early cigarette use and later drug use, and highlights the importance of addressing cigarette addiction. Cecilia uses the metaphor uh, of clearing water, saying, my spiritual teacher tells a story about clearing out a water source by continually adding in fresh water. Eventually, the water will be clear and healthy. I believe harm reduction works like that, adding healthy practices and support while titrating out the more harmful practices can be a more gentle and effective way of assisting a person to find their recovery. Christy encapsulates our whole conversation in saying, for me, harm reduction in whatever form is about saving lives and helping others grow. So once again, a very rich conversation, and I appreciate your thoughtful contributions. It's quite clear that you are deepening and broadening your knowledge base, and my hat's off to you.